Welcome to Shareholders of a Better World, brought to you by TBLI Group. At TBLI Group, we have an established reputation as an organization dedicated to building the ecosystem of global sustainability and impact investing. We're doing this through educating, advising, and facilitating transactions in global sustainability and impact business, as well as capital solutions for private companies, family offices, and fund groups. For nearly 25 years, TBLI Group has created a vertically integrated ecosystem of education to action through TBLI conferences and TBLI consulting. More about our company can be found at tbligroup.com. This webinar is brought to you by TBLI Foundation, which hosts educational learning experiences dedicated to a better planet. Through the foundation, we build sustainable communities by sharing the people and the experiences making a difference to so many of our lives around the world. Our weekly podcasts bring impact thought leaders that are doing and not only chatting. Now, let me introduce my guest today.
I'm quite thrilled today that Elisa Turner has agreed to do a masterclass on Impact IQ. So, Elisa, I'm going to, for those of you who are not familiar, just kind of briefly give a very short story of yourself, and then I'll go right into the presentation.
Nice to meet everybody. I'm Elisa Turner, the founder of Impact IQ. I started my journey working in the apparel industry in New York many years ago, and was a senior executive, climbed my way up as a senior executive at companies like Ralph Lauren and Oxford Industries, and then moved to Europe and worked with companies like Paul Smith. I'm a very avid systems thinker. And my responsibilities in the apparel industry were looking after global merchandising and production. So I traveled all over the world, worked with factories globally, saw all kinds of environmental and human rights issues, saw the interconnection to profitability and finance, as well as reputational issues. The industry at the time, this was the 90s, wasn't keen to do anything because it was all the short-term thinking. So I left, wrote a thesis connecting sustainable business practices to financial outcomes and brand value. Collaborated with Goldman Sachs when they were writing their updated investment thesis, and the first to coin the term ESG, and that was in early 2000s. Then I understood that we needed a reporting framework, like a financial reporting framework, in order to be able to talk in business terms about the impacts of non-financial practices. So I sourced out the leaders and the associations like the Global Reporting Initiative, Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, of which I was a founding alliance member, TCFD, et cetera. And for the last 20 years, I have been focused on trying to connect sustainable business practices to financial outcomes, and worked with global leading institutions, investors, corporations, and standard setters. We've now developed the very first investor-grade intangible asset business intelligence platform that we are now scaling and we've brought to market. And we're excited to share that with you today, and the business case behind it, our why.
So the ultimate Swiss Army knife that everybody wanted. Okay, well, I'm going to dive right into the presentation.
Welcome to the Impact IQ MasterClass. Today we're going to explore how business value has fundamentally changed, and why systems used to measure and manage it must evolve too. We call this shift Economics 3.0, the era of the intangible sustainable economy. Over the past 30 years, enterprise value has completely inverted. Where once companies were valued primarily on tangible assets, things like buildings, machinery, and inventory, Now, the majority of enterprise value comes from intangible and sustainable assets. In today's economy, tangible plus intangible plus sustainable equals total enterprise value. This represents one of the most profound shifts in modern business history, a move from what we can see to what we must understand. This change isn't theoretical, it's happening in real time now. Some examples: 60% of global GDP is already governed by sustainability disclosure mandates. 98% of Fortune 1000 companies report on their ESG performance. Over 40 global jurisdictions now require sustainability reporting aligned with IFRS sustainability and ISSB standards. What's driving this is investors, regulators, insurers, and customers are all demanding visibility into how companies create value beyond their balance sheet. We now live in an intangible, sustainable economy, where up to 90% of enterprise value resides in things you cannot touch, like innovation, trust, reputation, and resilience. Yet legacy systems built for a tangible industrial world haven't kept pace. This disconnect leaves business leaders flying blind when it comes to what truly defines performance, risk, and valuation, and resilience. Let's define these assets. Tangible assets are physical: property, equipment, cash, things you can touch. Intangible assets include intellectual property, culture, and relationships, often the drivers of innovation and loyalty, which do overlap with sustainable assets. Sustainable assets actually are overlap with intangible assets, and they're defined as those that ensure resilience, like climate readiness, ethics, governance, and social and human capital. Together, these three asset classes make up the whole picture of enterprise value. From economics 1.0 to 3.0, the evolution of value. We've moved through three distinct eras of economic management. Economics 1.0 was the industrial era, where tangible assets define success. Economics 2.0, the digital and knowledge era, where innovation and brand became the new engines of value, but systems remained static and siloed. Now we've entered Economics 3.0, the whole systems era, where everything is connected: operations, finance, people, and planet. Value today is systemic, and managing it requires a new kind of intelligence. The systemic gap. The problem is that most organizations are still managing with tools built for Economics 1.0 or 2.0. These systems are fragmented, siloed, static, and incomplete, leaving risks unquantified and opportunities unrealized. Impakt IQ solves this gap. We translate intangible and sustainable performance into auditable investor-grade business intelligence, making the invisible measurable, reportable, and actionable. A whole system solution is critical. Today, this whole system solution is essential for companies. Impakt IQ is the missing layer connecting sustainability, operations, and finance, static systems, and dynamic systems. When we integrate the static and dynamic systems, we see the full story, a complete data-driven view of enterprise value. That's the future of performance management. Risks and opportunities. Here's the reality. Unmanaged intangible assets become risks. Blind spots eventually surface as financial, reputational, or operational damage. But when these assets are managed dynamically, they create growth. Insights become foresight and opportunities, enabling innovation, capital access, and resilience, as well as brand preference. Managing intangible and sustainable assets isn't just about compliance. It's about strategic and financial advantage. Introducing Impakt IQ. We are the first platform to quantify the 90% of enterprise value hidden in intangible and sustainable assets. Our platform measures performance, risk, and value with the same rigor as financial reporting. For the first time, business leaders can see and manage their entire value system. Think of Impakt IQ as the operating system for Economics 3.0. It bridges sustainability, operations, and finance, giving you a single investor-grade view of performance. It's not just reporting, it's management intelligence for the new economy. Here's how it works. First, we assess what's material by industry and sector and jurisdiction, as well as compliance requirements. Then we analyze performance through KPIs and IM scores, which we call Intangible Asset Management scores. They're like FICO or S&P scores, but for intangibles, but they still follow the same rigors as the financial requirements to establish a FICO or S&P score. Next, we align the KPIs with every operational division across departments, and we correlate those to the operational P&L. So intangible KPIs can be correlated to P&L and ROI. Then we take that data and the scores, and they're verified throughout the system, and we follow general accounting audit principles. So they're verified and auditable for investor-grade dashboards and reporting. We go from assessment to assurance. So Impakt IQ turns complexity into clarity. Some of our features. So our IM framework standardizes the management of intangible and sustainable assets. Our platform aligns with financial management methodology and reporting periods. This slide shows a sample of our intangible asset KPI P&L. And again, it aligns with the financial P&L, so you can compare your IM score to actually financial performance and understand the impacts of your intangible business practices on your financial performance. We simplify complex sustainability data into clear, comparable, and actionable insights. Every data point is mapped, measured, and aligned with global financial standards, ensuring your sustainability story is credible and investment ready. The IM scorecard, seen below on this slide, gives leaders a complete executive level view of performance, customizable by operational division, asset class, dimension, scope, etc. It highlights risks, opportunities, and strengths across key operational and sustainability areas. This is enterprise intelligence for the age of Economics 3.0. The future of business is holistic, measurable, and transparent. Impakt IQ empowers companies to manage the 90% of value that was once invisible, bringing together financial grade rigor and sustainability intelligence. Thank you for joining the Impakt IQ MasterClass.
Thank you. That was brilliant. I was questioned before inviting your secret weapon onto the podium and Paulden, and also taking questions. It's you never struck me as a very nerdy person. This seems like a lot of very nerdy work. Let me ask you to unmute. There we go. Okay. And we launched, I think, a year and a half ago, the Better World Prize, which was a kind of an open source database comparability for all of the different ESG models and frameworks. And we had 44 independent companies presenting their system. And you can go on our website and see that. Every single one of the well-funded established organizations, whether it's PRI, CDP, World Benchmark Alliance, EcoVadis, B Corp, all of them refused to participate because they didn't want comparability. So everyone is always complaining that it is. So why have you been able to accomplish something that everyone says they're doing it, but actually is not really doing it?
Great question. Thanks, Robert. I think the critical element for me is, first of all, I had operational experience working in corporations. I also had investor experience. And yes, I'm a big nerd. Einstein was one of my heroes as a kid. So I also understood, and something that, it was one of his famous quotes is, achieving simplicity is one of the most challenging tasks. And when I saw the gap, looking at all of the people you just explained who wouldn't participate in this, comparing different systems, what was critical is understanding the detail that was required, both from a corporate perspective, able to operationalize this, as well as what the investor expectations were, and then the investor expectations. So there aren't very many people. I literally, for the last 20 years, have been trying to figure this problem out, and maybe I'm more stubborn and have more tenacity than others. And was willing to make that compromise because it's been a passion, and lots of hurdles, lots of testing to try and figure it out. And one of the things that I also understood, having a very high financial acumen, is we needed a reporting framework similar to that of our financial reporting framework that was established in 1933, so we could actually have an auditable scores and accounting system for non-intangible assets that would allow us to have comparable P&Ls essentially, across within an industry and across jurisdictions globally. And I just put my head down and I just haven't given up. I mean, we failed I'm going to say failure, but it was testing. So it's it's been a long journey of 20 years. And unlike most other people, we're extremely collaborative. And I'm also very, very detailed, but I'm also still keep that 60,000-foot view. And having something that is also beautifully designed and elegant for user interface was critical because we had to keep it simple. And we had, I had a very big checklist that we had to check all the boxes. And it's taken a long time, a lot of effort and money, and we've done it. So I truly believe that we've cracked the code that most others were trying to. So we look forward to next steps.
When one other point, when we started TBLI about 25, 26 years ago, maybe a bit longer, the model for ESG reporting was basically the O.J. Simpson model, meaning if we don't actually have a video of you murdering your wife, you're innocent. So
Yep.
it was self-assessment. So they sent the form, you filled it in, and then they would check that by what I call control by ignorance,
Yep.
meaning if the media didn't write about you, you were okay. But the media can only process press releases. They have no idea what it's like to work in an organization. They don't know if there's a burning cigarette next to a can of gasoline. So it's evolved. However, why is it that the financial sector and investors in particular have been more than willing to accept all of the monumental frauds from Parmalat, WorldCom, Enron, Madoff, all of that, and they keep complaining that ESG is not good enough?
So that's been one of my bugaboo that has been, I want to say, the fuel that's been driving us to be able to develop an auditable tool that produces these IM scores, intangible asset management scores, from the inside out, that mirror and have the same rigors and audit that financials do. So what you just explained in the whole ESG and ESG scores and all these analysts, I collaborated with a lot of the, Sustainalytics and a lot of the MCSIs in the early days. And to me, it was like fraud because they're establishing and they're creating these scores based on algorithms from the outside in. And that was, I'm a history nut as well. So when I was studying and figuring out how to do this, I looked at how financial reporting and management evolved over the years. And previous to 1933, there were no global standards and frameworks for financial reporting. So it was very similar to ESG. So companies could report whatever they wanted, however they wanted, essentially. And that's what ESG has been. But it was actually the investment community and that actually backed SASB, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, initially, who was the first organization led by Gene, who was determined to go through the same rigors that were required for creating financial standards, to create sustainability standards that were material and followed the same definitions and rigors. So once we had that, that was the first step to then, I want to say, almost disqualifying all of the other guys because if they didn't follow those. But the problem with these standards and the way the reporting has been done to date is that it's backwards looking. It's checking boxes. It's not dynamic. It's still static, if that makes sense. So what our goal was to be able to develop a dynamic system. And then in 2023, when the International Sustainability Standards Board was created, and we actually now have 40 jurisdictions that have adopted comparable and aligned standards, we now have a framework that can be implemented that actually is dynamic and forward-looking. So it allows companies to be able to see and create their own, to see where their risks are based on these globally identified KPIs. And they also provide the insight into all of the elements that are risk that's essentially proactive. So it's not backwards looking, it's forward looking. And that's the biggest difference between what we've developed and everybody else.
And yeah, so your ambition is quite big. I mean, this is not, maybe a couple of people in, Dubuque, Iowa is gonna use this. But so your ambition is to have for listed companies, private companies, for VCs and PE to be able to use this. That's quite a jump.
Correct. So the way that, we just set out to solve a problem. And the problem was that the current management systems are static. The ERP, CRM systems are very much back-looking and they're siloed. If you look at any dynamic system like an ecosystem, you have to have a holistic view and you have to be able to be proactive and identify risks and be able to correct them. And we set out to build that system that was the third layer of business management that was missing, that would plug into existing ERP or CRM systems, or for a startup, it's part of their roadmap that they can start from the beginning and understand where their risks are and what they have to manage. And so the system plugs into and pulls data from all the existing systems. So we're not a carbon tool. Carbon tools actually feed into our system, just like an ERP or CRM. So we are the next layer that creates the holistic view. So it's kind of, one of the metaphors that we use is even in the medical industry. So if you look at, Eastern medicine, and in the early days, they used to put, leeches on people to bleed them because they thought that that was going to cure disease. Then we moved to, okay, you're going to go in for your physical. We're just going to take blood and we're going to listen to your heart, and that's going to determine your health rating. But those are siloed, they're not full integrated systems. And business has been operating the same way. So then we move to functional medicine, MRIs, X-rays, and lifestyle issues, which is functional medicine. And that's where we are today to be able to assess the whole health of a human. But that's what we bring. So we're like the functional medicine element that slides into a business that gives you the whole holistic perspective to understand what's driving your value and your risk.
Could you use Impact IQ for the carbon market? Because there's a lot of voluntary stuff, so there's criticism of the information is not valid, is not accurate enough. Could it be used for that too?
100%. So the way the system works is we actually quantify, we say like the intangible sustainability elements. So for example, when a company, is reporting, a public company is reporting and they have to disclose material risks in their 10K, they are required to assess based on governance, strategy, risk assessment, value creation opportunities, metrics, targets, and performance. So all of that stuff that isn't quantifiable, essentially, it's just an MD&A and explanation. So we actually quantify that. So when you look at most of the carbon tools, they're hard metrics. So it's empirical data, which is backwards looking. What our tool then slides in and looks at all of the other elements that actually drive that empirical data. So yes, for carbon, because if somebody, you're reporting what let's say your emissions are 10,000 tons for this quarter, but you actually projected that they would be 5,000. So you have to start looking at, okay, ask the first question, why? And what are the risks? So our tool actually will illuminate all of that and allow you to be proactive. So it works in tandem with the empirical data.
Okay. I had a question from Rich. Let's see, the creation of financial standards, globally enabled benchmarking, and other analysis techniques for determining what is the best practice, both financially and operationally. What kind of benchmarking or analysis do you see Impact IQ bringing to life? Will Impact IQ's data make it easier to use AI?
1000%. Thanks for that question, Rich. Absolutely. So the first deliverable in everything that our system does is it creates a benchmark report. So again, if you compare it to like financial management and reporting, we align with financial reporting periods. So the very first thing we do is identify your industries and sectors, and then what your compliance issues are, and then any other voluntary material issues. And we develop a dual materiality assessment, and a full benchmark report that aligns again with global audit practices. So it is third-party verified. So it's like a FICO or S&P score for intangible assets. And so we have a full benchmark analysis so companies can see where they sit on all these critical issues. And then those produce, and you saw in the video, we have just a sample of what that report looks like. It's also obviously dashboards that are accessible on the platform. And then those scores what they also serve as an index. So the more companies within certain industry sectors that go on the platform, and Paulden can even talk to this, any of the big investment funds and the analysts, they're looking to build indexes by industry sector with like an S&P score in order to establish the value of a company and rate the company. So our IM scores actually create they're the precursors and start creating indexes. So using AI, we can start comparing. We're actually working on this algorithm right now. Is your IM score is a direct correlation between that and your balance sheet or your EBITDA or your operational division P&L. So if your IM score is very low at 27 for a KPI like your carbon management, or your carbon performance, and if it's at like 27 and you're seeing a direct correlation of your energy expenses and operational expenses related to energy on your P&L, there is a direct correlation and a scenario analysis that if you then look at and can raise your IM score to say 60, how will that impact your P&L and the profitability and ROI of what you invest in order to get that score up, your IM score up. So AI is brilliant, and we're implementing it all throughout the tool. So that will allow us to do direct comparisons and crack the code that one of the critical things is what's the ROI of sustainability. But you had to get down to the detail that we've developed. Just like, again, in financial reporting, you go down to every line item in a P&L and then it rolls up into your corporate report. So our system drills down into that detail, so we're able to do that, and AI is going to be a huge enabler for us.
I'm trying to unmute Paulden's audio because it doesn't seem to be working. I'll try to get that.
I think it worked, Robert.
Okay, there we go. Hey.
Hi, Paulden.
Hi, everybody.
Let me see if I can. Oh, there, and maybe even a photo. There we are.
Good
All the
evening.
way from Sikkim. Thank you for joining today.
Not at all. Well, I would endorse. I mean, empirically, you can see, and it's kind of intuitive as you think about it. Sustainability turns out to be pretty good business. When you index and you take a look across various sectors, when the market cap of Tesla is bigger than every automaker combined, it's not because it's sustainable, it's because the consumer wants it generally. And so I think as you go through these indices, there's both the market driven as well as what are you doing to community impact. And, I think while we're talking about it as being intangible, I think it's very tangible from a valuation perspective.
I do have a question here from Jacques. He wanted to know, would you say that your approach is akin to and/or allows for measuring performance as defined as the 6 capital model developed by the IIRC?
Okay, I am not very familiar with that. Paulden, do you want to?
I missed the question. If you could repeat that, Robert.
Sure. Would you say that your approach is very akin to and/or allows the measuring performance as defined by the 6 capital model developed by the IIRC? And can you type in what does the IIRC stand for? Because I'm not familiar with that. Doesn't strike a chord, Jacques.
Yeah, same here. I mean, we do a lot of intrinsic valuation work across a number of sectors. And as we take a look at it, you'll see there's a reason why, for example, in the food sector, better for you, considered organic, as a sector. When Whole Foods was listed in today's replacement peers, trade at a premium, but they trade at a premium mainly because that's what consumers want. So we've done a fair bit, but I'm not familiar with the metric that you're talking about because we're looking at a much more fundamental valuation perspective, from a investment decision perspective.
This is the IIRC Center for the International Integrated Reporting Council.
Okay, so yes, I am extremely familiar with that. Sorry, it's very early.
Okay.
So I've actually collaborated with them, and we started collaborating and actually presented this to Paul Pullman, who is, very involved in the IIRC in the early days. And so one of the objectives was to actually build the tool that would help move integrated reporting forward. So yes, this is absolutely aligned. I have been collaborating with a number of people involved, including, I don't know if you know, Rethinking Capital out of the UK and Andrew Watson. So yes, the goal is ultimately, and it's going to take, the whole community and more eventually, but hopefully this is the foundation of building the missing element for integrated reporting.
Okay. And going forward, I mean, you're trying to get at least on paper and the press releases, everyone is so interested in sustainable reporting until you actually ask them, what have you done? Or they find it too complex. It's so complicated. We are a big pension fund, can't really, do this. Or oh, Trump is pushing back, so now the sovereign fund of Norway, we can't really be bothered with, with this. So but ultimately, the direction is clear. People are not looking, how do I pollute more, or how do I waste more? How can I, reduce my social and environmental footprint? What are the challenges that you have in getting acceptance from this system, from asset owners, service providers? Because they're probably, I remember when I was oh, it's froze. Okay. So let me put myself back on there. So when I used to be on the advisory board of a big French asset manager, Fortis, which was Fortis became BNP. And they said we were on the advisory board of how we should approach sustainability, and they decided to drop a service provider, a data provider, and they were going to go with another one. And I said, why are you dropping that one? That one's pretty good. The one you're going to is pretty bad. I said, we know. And but you have already a good one. Yeah, we know. But the one you're going to is not anyway. Yeah, we know. So why are you doing that? He said, well, the one that we're going to integrates more easily and cheaper in our IT system. And that's why we're going with them. So they were willing to accept inferior information because it was going to be much cheaper in integrating. Do you have that? Has that issue come up with your clients or potential clients?
Uh, it hasn't yet because of the way that we've built the system, and it's so simple to log in and to work the system, but we're still in early days. So, that's why we're raising our seed round right now, and we are also in discussions with a number of global delivery partners and potential operating partners. So what our strategy is to find the right people. And our system, the way it's built, can actually plug into any existing ERP and CRM or any kind of business intelligence system. So it will not hinder. And the reality is, I mean, there's nobody doing what we do. Everybody has, all the existing systems are still quite siloed. We have the only investor grade integrated system. And so, and honestly, everybody that we have presented to globally, including all the big consulting firms and accounting firms, we're in discussions with all of them as potential delivery partners. Our biggest challenge right now is the fact that we are a small team. We have an extraordinary software partner in Brilio who can scale, and they're platinum partners with Google and Salesforce and all of that. but we need an operating partner to help us scale. So that's been, to be honest, I mean, there hasn't been really one client that we've pitched to that says we don't need this. We can use something else because we're the leaders and we're first to market with this. Our challenge is now getting our seed funding to be able to scale our growth and be able to service the people that want to work with us so far.
And I would imagine people are, we noticed that that's why many didn't want to participate in our open source database of the different system because they're happy with the system they have and they didn't want comparability and they have steady cash flow. So here comes Elisa Turner knocking the board off the table. So I would imagine many who are eating from that pig trough are not too happy about you.
100%. We're definitely the disruptors. And I welcome that. And I welcome comparability. And to be perfectly honest, we've demoed pretty well. And I know most, if not, I mean, and there's so many of them, but most of the software systems out there that are elements and silos within us, some of them even, want to become part of our team, which is very telling in and of itself. And what we find quite amusing is we've gotten to a point now where even if we want to be on webinars with some of our perceived competitors, though they're not, because they're only servicing sort of one area, whether it's environment or something, and it's empirical data they're trying to figure out, they've shut us out of even any of their webinars. So they won't even talk to us, which is crazy because, the only way we're going to solve this, and it's, if you look at equilibrium game theory, the most profitable path forward for all is understanding what's good for the individual and the whole. And that is, we're very collaborative and open, and we welcome comparing and learning and constantly improving.
Your background is in the large fashion brands. You work for some very big, Ralph Lauren and Paul Smith and all of that. And they get a lot of pushback that because of fast fashion and also not doing such a great job, or now there's a big problem in France because Shine just rented this big department store. Do you find that that they're interested? I mean, you probably still have friends who work in that space and
Yeah.
contact. Are they interested in this because they get a lot of negative publicity about their behavior?
100%, 100%. The industries that are probably leading the evolution would be to Paulden's point, consumer goods. Because the reality, consumers are demanding this, and they're demanding disclosure, and the risk for companies not using our tool there's greenwashing and the multi-million-dollar fines associated with that, and the loss of trust and consumer support for brands that are greenwashing or similarly not disclosing. We have multiple studies and data that prove that companies that actually are trusted and brands that are looked at, like as Paulden said, Tesla, but Whole Foods as well, and any of the products on the shelves of Whole Foods, if we have two products side by side, one that is trusted like I want to say, Dr. Bronner's, if people know that brand, versus Dove. Dr. Bronner's is going to outsell up to 30% consistently because it is a trusted brand and has the verification. And so consumers are definitely driving this. So yes, the apparel industry, but the reality is the investors as well are requiring this. companies like Amazon, Walmart, Costco, and certainly throughout Europe and the UK, because it's in Australia and Japan and Singapore, because it's becoming mandatory in law, they have to disclose all of this. And so in RFPs for any of these companies that are obliged and from a compliance perspective to disclose any of these issues, they then have to have all of their suppliers disclose and report. So there's that ripple effect across the whole global industry and supply chain. So, so any of those industry sectors that are that high profile, they are really driving this, and it's the ripple effect is global.
There's a couple of academic professors also on this master class who were here live. So how can they learn more about this? Because it's their raison d'être. Because you're raising this seed round, but you're actually much further along than just a startup.
Right.
And so you probably can't share too much, but how could they help or benefit from what you've already achieved? I mean, do you have like beta testers or something?
Yeah, so we have, and we're looking for a few more sort of early beta clients that will give us constant feedback. From an academic perspective, I'm also involved in a number of global think tanks, and just organizations of trying to, we're evolving and moving the economy to economy 3.0, and what does that look like? So what I would suggest is reach out to me and
Hmm.
let's have a conversation. And you, Robert, and Paulden and I and a number of others have been pushing this forward. So my focus right now is twofold. It's getting in our investment so that we can scale, and finding our operating partner, and also an education. Education is absolutely critical. So when you look at the video that you played at the top of this masterclass, uh, it's, I think we're the first to be able to put this into a full economic context and take it beyond sustainability in a silo. And that's what people need to understand, because if they can put it in a metaphor and context, it helps them operationalize it. And honestly, it really is pretty simple when you get down to it. We're in that chaos right now. So it's, if the early days of the internet where people, everybody was throwing their hat in the ring, but then the few leaders surface. I know we are one of the leaders, and there are a million sustainability solutions out there. But like you said, Robert, look who's participating and where they've gone, and we've gone to the next level now. And it's a whole system perspective, and that's what we need to look at. So when we're talking to academics, it's about education. So anything we can do to support the education element is critical, because that's what's needed to move the needle. And we do a lot of webinars, we do a lot of live conference keynotes, and happy to do that as well.
Um, So, uh, in your eyes, and I guess in your team, you've created the ultimate Swiss Army knife that everybody wanted, but often, particularly the financial sector, they want to be often the last, not the first, unless it's AI, then they want to be the first. So, how can this audience who are here live and those that will watch the replay assist you in scaling up other than writing checks, which there's a couple of investors here that will pursue that. But what other ways can we assist you?
I might call him Paulden here, because Paulden comes from the finance world, and mergers and acquisitions and hard business. So he, and I love the way Paulden always described us as the Swiss Army knife and the index. We create an index as well as obviously the next layer of business intelligence that is critical to every single business in the world. Because you have to have insight into, the 90% of value in a company, and be able to manage it. So in order to help us, I mean, Paulden, I know you had your strategy, and what we've been sort of discussing is looking at both, we've worked with a number of private equity firms, doing them recommending that their portfolio companies use our tool in order for due diligence and to be able to establish their IM scores and understand their risks so that they can actually quantify the value. Paulden was also, I'm just trying to think, then also the corporations, and then also the analysts. So analysts, we will disrupt the current model of how people create ESG scores. Because the scores that are generated, just like a financial statement that's audited, and they have your EBITDA and your financial and your balance sheet, and your credit score is determined based on that. We do the comparable for the intangible assets. So the help that we need is anyone that is interested in a delivery partner relationship, operating partner relationship, and obviously funding. And if they want to be part of the next generation and the leaders, and then we look for values aligned people that want to have some fun in disrupting the next.
And who is at this stage, who are the ideal investors? Is this more of a family office thing? Is it more of a network of sustainable investors or impact investors? Is it, because some of the pension funds also took early positions in Sustainalytics when they got started, and then they got out and made some money. Are those the ideal person because they have different interests?
I think because of the diverse nature of what we're doing, right now we've been focused on sort of family offices and accredited investors. But at the same time, we've had people come to the table who are large funds and or potential operating and service providers who were interested in taking a stake in the company. So right now, I think it's family offices, or even larger funds that see the potential. And Paulden, I'll let you speak to the
Sure.
the TAM and the global potential. So that's sort of a wide open question, right? Because it depends on what the focus of the investor is. Our global potential is massive, $150 billion market. And it's depends on who we partner with as to how fast we infiltrate and disrupt that market. Paulden?
Yeah, I would add what's ironic here is this is doing good while doing good, in the sense that the market opportunity itself, because of reporting requirements, is very significant. And on the other hand, there's a lot of interest, from investors, and we see them cut a little bit differently. I think as we look across institutional investors versus pension funds, we see pension funds very focused because they're being asked to also fulfill a mission. It's not just about the return that you're getting, but it's also a little bit different than an institutional investor. What's the return that you're bringing to society? And I think Impact IQ brings two things. One is the pure business opportunity, which is significant. But I think what's really interesting is the ability to scale and to really bring sustainability, in front or to the fore, because it's a, really easy tool to use. And if you can get the market to measure it, companies will be enforced. I almost call it akin to like a Moody's rating on the companies. If you're performing and not performing, everybody's going to be using it as an index. And I think the easier it is to use, it'll be a tool, and it's going to push it to the fore, because I think a lot of people care about it, but it's hard. It's difficult for the companies to measure and to, calculate this. And on the other hand, investors have an interest, but they don't know, how properly, the scores are being calculated. And so I think there's a real opportunity. And I think beyond the business opportunity, I think some of the family offices and pension funds are those who also have a broader mission that's return for society that's driving it. But it's a good business on its own independently.
Yeah, and we're eligible for donor advised fund investment as well because of our mission.
Oh, okay. I never understood that system in the US. It always, somebody explained to me 15 times, someone gives a donation to a charity and they get the tax break, but now it can be used to invest.
Yeah.
So, all right, it doesn't make any sense, but okay. Trump is president, so anything is possible in that place. So you're a potential quick, non-extractive unicorn. Did I get it right? Who has a good sense of humor also?
Yeah, hopefully. Yes, I would hope that that's where we fall. The
And
category.
do you think that the financial sector, the asset owners, asset managers, and not the rating agencies, will be quicker to embrace this? Because the rating agency service providers, they have their own thing that they're trying to sell, and you're disrupting that. So is it relatively easy, as Paulden would say, that you could become, an index, an MSCI or S&P index? Is it easy for an asset owner to implement? Or does it take
So it
a
has
lot of
to
effort? That guy was working with these guys. Now I got to switch to Elisa. Oh, she's such a pain in the neck. She's giving me extra work to do.
So our clients actually, it starts with the business leaders, the executive teams. So most of our clients are, CFOs, CEOs, boards that say, okay, here's our head of sustainability, our CFO, or chief legal counsel. And that's who we start working with, because all of the scores have to be driven through the company, right? Just like a financial statement. So then the private equity or asset managers then want, or it can also be driven by any of them who want their portfolios. They want to understand the risk rating, value creation, and the value of their portfolio. So they ask their portfolio companies to then engage with us and go through the benchmark and add us into obviously their business systems. And it saves companies so much time and money. One of a group of our clients kind of said, like what we do for $60,000, our platform, that would be the cost, and maybe 3 or 4 hours of time for the clients using the platform. That would cost them historically $200,000 to $300,000 working with one of the big consulting firms, or hours and hours and hours of time, and they still don't get auditable data or proper systems. So it's asset managers, the ratings companies. Yes, they are the ones who probably, but Paulden will have another discussion, because it depends on the leadership. If they are visionaries, they're going to see the potential here and they're going to jump all over it. So if they are laggards, they're going to wait till they're forced. And that's, I think the ratings industry for sustainability and ESG ratings is being disrupted right now, even just by regulation. So it's primed, and they're just waiting for that disruption. I don't know. Paulden, do you have any other comments on that?
I think, rating agencies will see it more as an adjacent business, but I'm a believer that what's going to drive this will be the pension funds. And yes, in the aggregate, I mean, they're a substantial part of the market. But I also think that that's why private equity and other people are going to be looking at this, because frankly, the pension funds also want private companies to be doing this. So I think that demand is going to be there, from the people that are reviewing investments. And I think when that's there, the rating agencies will hop on. But the big opportunity and drive, I think, is going to be coming from the investors that are demanding it. And you can't ignore the pension funds in any market, in the aggregate. We all talk about BlackRock, but when you start to add up the large pension funds, I think they're going to be asking for proper measurable data. And, I think you've got the right solution in terms of the companies to adopt to make it readily usable and measurable.
I'll have to introduce you to the kind of new iteration of GRESB, which has been just announced. My friend became the CEO over there, and introduce you with a division of APG. I mean, they're slow, but they're doing quite innovative things around sustainability. This division is only looking at private markets and only doing relatively small tickets in the private market. So I'll reach out to them for an introduction. I apologize. We're going a little bit over time. Are there any important things that you haven't mentioned in the presentation or in the answer to my questions? The audience didn't have any specific questions. The replay will be available quickly for those who want to go through it again, and I'll also send you a list of everyone who signed up, and I'll share Elisa's contact details. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you feel is essential, which sets you apart? Because obviously, when you're disrupting such a big industry, people don't always like to change. They're comfortable. This is the same thing. All family offices and wealthy individuals keep complaining about private banks and fees, but they don't often leave because the
Right.
money is very sticky. So, it does take time, but I'm glad to hear that it's relatively smooth process to integrate your system
Yeah.
in an organization, whether it's a large organization. Is it easier to offer this to the private equity and the VC market than it is for, the I don't know, the BlackRocks or Fidelities, who are managing, massive amounts of money, but mainly in liquid markets?
It's the same process because it starts with the corporations, right? The corporations have to produce, they have to use the platform in order to produce their statements and understand their IM scores. And it starts with understanding what standard and frameworks they have to are material to them, what KPIs are material to them. So I think so it starts with the corporations, and then as Paulden said, it's then the BlackRocks of the world, and then the analysts draw on that. But it all starts with the corporations. I think the elements that we haven't discussed that are really critical, kind of in closing, is that I come from also, a design background, and one of our mandates was to ensure the user interface was simple and elegant. One of the challenges with all the other systems out there is that not just that they're siloed, but they are so chaotic to use, and they don't produce really user-friendly information. We are so grateful to our team. I am so grateful to our team that we have developed one of the most elegant systems out there, that I would say is comparable to what Apple did with computers. And that's cool. And we challenged Brilio, our software partners, and we have come up with, and our user interface is so simple and elegant that what was so complex for companies to figure out, and to actually disclose, we have made as elegant and simple as opening up your Apple computer and just clicking on certain things and providing certain information that is just, really almost point and click. And then verified. So even the verification is so simple that though we're talking about complex issues, this is really as elegant as using your Apple computer compared to, old DOS systems. And that's kind of the comparison. Because that's, the studying sort of how human behavior works and consciousness and change. That was one of the biggest challenges over the last 20 years is, I've been a talking head for so many of the big firms and consulting companies and sitting in boards and at conferences, and nobody wants to change. So you have to almost make it fun and gamification and make it really simple and elegant. And that was one of our mandates, and I'm really proud of what we've achieved because I believe it is. And any global framework can be uploaded into our framework library. And not just sustainability, but if they have also other intangible frameworks, like even lead frameworks can be uploaded, ISO frameworks. And it's just really point and click. And it's pretty cool what we've been able to achieve.
No, I'm very impressed with what you, because I haven't me in the space a long time, and being the George Carlin curmudgeon, constantly complaining about things. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and also developing this platform. And what I'll do is, I like to kind of close with a quote from Upton Sinclair, who said, "It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it." Um, and thank you, Paulin, so much for being very supportive of Elisa and her work. Thank you all very much for coming. And Elisa, thank you so much for rolling this stone up the hill. I need to close on all the people who worked on this. So I want to thank our guests and who attended, and those that will watch a replay. I need to also thank our entire production team. Ricky, my absolute better half with no filter. Xi Jinping, our head of transparency and integrity. Vladimir Putin, our head of conflict resolution. Jeff Bezos, our human resources and full text compliance leader. Elon Musk, our humility coach, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, our Nobel Prize nominee for stupidity. So thank you all very much, and thank you for doing this. And the replay will be available rather quickly, and I'll send it out to everyone who registered. And we'll speak soon. Thank you all. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.